Tonight on Steelers Talk, we have a loaded edition of Steelers news and rumors. At the top of today's show, we're going to be breaking down a new report from ESPN's Adam Schefter claiming that the Steelers are, in fact, targeting a wide receiver trade before the NFL trade deadline this year. Then I've got my film takeaways from the Steelers' Week 6 victory versus the Cleveland Browns yesterday, offensive and defensive takeaways. And then Mike Tomlin, because it's a short week, the Steelers have the Bengals on Thursday Night Football here this week. Tomlin did take the podium today on Tomlin Monday. Have some stuff I want to break down from his presser today at the end of today's show, so make sure you guys stick around. It's going to be a little bit of a longer one today because we got a lot to talk about here on Victory Monday here on Steelers Talk. But tomorrow on this channel, we will be having our Week 7 Thursday Night Football preview versus the Cincinnati Bengals. That'll be our first video that comes out in the early portion of tomorrow, and then Ponzi and I will be live later in the afternoon starting at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. So lots of Steelers content coming your way tomorrow. Keep your eye out for that Steelers versus Bengals preview that will come out early in the day tomorrow, though. And then on Thursday, we will be going live on this channel for yet another Steelers Talk live watch party, which all starts at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. An hour and 15 minutes of pregame coverage followed by live play-by-play and live reaction to the game itself, and then, of course, extensive post-game coverage. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button to never miss any of our videos here on Steelers Talk or our live shows, our live watch parties, all the content that we provide for you guys for free on this channel. So if you love the Pittsburgh Steelers and you want content on this football team every single day that's informative, free, and extensive, make sure you click that subscribe button right now. All right, so now, according to ESPN's Adam Schefter, Omar Khan is on the hunt to add another receiver to this football team before the end of the NFL trade deadline. Adam Schefter reported today on the Pat McAfee show that the Steelers are, in fact, looking for a wide receiver trade before the NFL deadline this year. Now, the trade deadline this year is less than a month away here. It's Tuesday, November 4th, so just a few more weeks that the Steelers have here in order to execute a wide receiver trade and add to this group that already includes DK Metcalf, Calvin Austin as the two bona fide starters, as well as guys like Scotty Miller, Roman Wilson, Ben Skoranek, and Isaiah Hodgins. And guys, in terms of the caliber of wide receiver that you should be expecting the Steelers are going to get, I would say somewhere in the range of like a decent wide receiver 2 to wide receiver 3. Like if you're hoping that the Steelers add another number 1 type of receiver kind of guy, I'm just not sure if that's what the Pittsburgh Steelers necessarily want to do. A, because you're going to have to give up a high draft pick to get one of those guys. Not sure Omar Khan and the Steelers are too interested in doing that. But also, logistically, I just don't know if there's enough targets to go around in this Steelers offense to be able to make another number 1 caliber receiver happy inside this scheme. Because right now, you already have DK Metcalf getting the number 1 receiver targets in this offense. All right, and that's not going to be changing anytime soon. And if you bring in a guy that's used to getting number 1 receiver targets and looks, and they don't get that here in Pittsburgh, they're not going to be very happy to be the number 2 to DK's number 1 here in Pittsburgh. Plus, Pittsburgh doesn't use a lot of 3 wide receiver sets, and they really do prioritize the run game here in Pittsburgh. And, whether you like Calvin Austin III as a number 2 receiver or not, this team really does like him, and they like using him quite a bit. When he comes back from that injury, they view him as somebody that can win to all 3 levels of the field, somebody that's an excellent route runner and can create separation versus man coverage. Somebody's got the speed as well to take the top off the defense. So the Steelers really like DK Metcalf, and they seem to really like Calvin Austin III. I think they're open to adding another 3rd receiver that they like to the quote-unquote starting rotation. But if you're thinking they're going to add another expensive, number 1 caliber wide receiver, I'm just not sure if that's the caliber of guy they're looking to add, given their offensive philosophy and identity this year. So if you're hoping for somebody like an A.J. Brown or a DJ Moore or Calvin Ridley or maybe even Chris Olave, like Chris Olave's gotten number 1 receiver attention since he was drafted out of Ohio State. If he comes to Pittsburgh here and he's not getting the same level of targets or the same amount of attention, would he really be happy here in Pittsburgh? And would he really want to sign a long-term extension here with the Steelers? I think those are very good questions to ask when talking about wide receiver targets and who the Steelers could potentially get. 5 names that I think you should absolutely be keeping your eye out for here, and I think are legitimately, realistic targets for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Jakobi Meyers, he hasn't really been a true number 1 in his career, so I don't think he would take offense to getting number 2 caliber looks here in Pittsburgh. Plus, he's very tough hands over the middle of the field. I think he can develop a lot of chemistry with Aaron Rodgers right away because he can catch balls over the middle of the field and make those tough catches that Rodgers asks his receivers to make. Also, he's got some good size, can be a run blocker. Rashid Shaheed, we already know, or at least it was reported that the Steelers made a call regarding Rashid Shaheed over the bye. Apparently, the Saints weren't really willing to sell at that point in the season, but they could be willing to sell closer to the NFL trade deadline with them keep losing football games. Christian Kirk is a name that's interesting to me. He's been buried on that depth chart there in Houston after they traded for him this offseason. Steelers were very interested in him last year before he got injured in Jacksonville. Could certainly see that be a possibility for the Steelers. Dontayvion Wicks from Green Bay, another bigger receiver that could run block, but he's also a really good route runner. Not the best hands in the world, but he fits kind of the mold that the Steelers would want in a receiver in a trade. And then Allen Lazard just makes a lot of sense, guys. A lot of people have pointed that out because of his ability to communicate with Rodgers. He understands Rodgers' language, so to speak, and they have a lot of chemistry together. As a wide receiver 3, that could be a player, especially because he's probably only worth like a 7th-round pick. That could be exactly the type of receiver the Steelers are looking to add. Now, I will throw in another team here, guys, for you to keep your eye out for, and that is the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City is getting a couple of their receivers back into the lineup. They just added Xavier Worthy back, and now they're about to get Rashid Rice back into their starting lineup as well. And you guys can take a look at their rotation. Their 2 bona fide starters, I would say, are Rashid Rice and Xavier Worthy. Then they'll kind of rotate Hollywood Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Tyquan Thornton in. Thornton and Schuster have had a lot of playing time this year because of Rice and Worthy missing time this season, and then they drafted Jalen Royals. So he's a young player that they probably like as depth and maybe a future starter, even though he hasn't played all that much in Kansas City this year. So it's a pretty crowded room. They have some room to be able to maybe unload one of these guys for a draft pick. And I think if they trade someone, it's kind of hard to tell which one it would be, but I think it'd be one of these 3 guys. Hollywood Brown, he's on an expiring contract. He's more of a veteran piece, not a long-term solution for them. Maybe they feel like with Tyquan Thornton playing pretty well so far this year that they would rather let go of Brown before the trade deadline. Juju Smith-Schuster with Rashid Rice getting back into the lineup. I think Juju will probably see a pretty decreased workload in that Kansas City offense, but he's actually played pretty well this year as kind of that bruising, kind of bigger yak threat from the slot that he is. And then Tyquan Thornton, man, like he has played pretty darn well. Not a lot of people expected a whole lot out of him this year, but he has made some really good catches. He's been a legit deep threat. I could certainly see the Steelers being interested in any one of these 3 receivers heading into the trade deadline. That is, if they're available. So predict it for me down there in the comment section. Will the Steelers trade for a wide receiver this year? And if so, which one do you think they trade for? Do you think it's going to be Allen Lazard? Do you think Jakobi Meyers, Rashid Shaheed, someone else? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section for today's pin question. In just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at PrizePicks. And while I tell you about PrizePicks, let me know down there in the comment section if the Steelers will trade for a receiver, and if so, which one? And with that, let's have word from our sponsor today at PrizePicks. And you and I, we both make decisions every single day, but not all those decisions get you paid. But when you download the free PrizePicks app on your phone today, being right with your decisions can actually get you paid stone cold cash. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. Football season is finally here, and you better believe I'll be getting my PrizePicks lineups in all season long. PrizePicks is simple to play. You just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. PrizePicks also puts their users first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. PrizePicks also offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. And a new feature from PrizePicks that I absolutely love is injury reboots. If one of your players leaves the game in the first half and does not return, PrizePicks will not count it as a loss. So for my PrizePicks lineup tonight for Monday Night Football, we got the doubleheader tonight, taking the more on rush attempts for Bijan Robinson, the less on receiving yards for Keon Coleman, the more on interceptions for Caleb Williams, and the more on touchdowns here for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, the Commanders running back. So download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup on the free PrizePicks app today. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All right, so now let's get into my Week 6 film takeaways. Had the opportunity to sit down, watch the film, offense and defense here today from yesterday's win, and I definitely came away with some takeaways here on both sides of the ball that I want to share with you guys. So we'll start with the offensive film takeaways, and jumbo personnel still works, guys, and that's very apparent on the 17 snaps that they went to those jumbo personnel looks where Spencer Anderson and Darnell Washington are eligible tight ends playing alongside, obviously, the 5 Steelers offensive linemen. And, in the 9 runs that they ran in the game in jumbo personnel, and something I really appreciated, by the way, is that Arthur Smith actually threw in some passing plays with them in jumbo, so it's not completely predictable. But in the 9 run plays that they ran, they averaged 5.4 yards per carry. By the way, guys, that would put you very near the top of the National Football League in yards per carry among the NFL rankings right now, if that was the season total overall. So the Steelers are bullying these teams, and it's not just any teams. Like Minnesota, is widely regarded as a top 10 defense, and Cleveland is viewed not only as a top 5, top 10 at least defense in the league, but the number 1 run defense in the league heading into that Week 6 matchup that they just played. So the fact that they were able to bully those guys at the line of scrimmage should really bode well for the Pittsburgh Steelers' chances of doing the same to lesser defenses in the weeks to come. And then when it comes to Darnell Washington, who obviously is a part of those jumbo personnel looks, he's leading the tight end room right now. And not only in terms of production from a receiving standpoint, but also in terms of snaps overall. Washington led all of Pittsburgh's tight ends in snaps versus the Browns yesterday, and he also led the entire group in production as well. 5 targets was more targets than he had the entire season up to that point. He had 3 catches for 62 yards, and I really appreciate what Darnell Washington brings to the table in both phases, right? Not only can he be a menacing run blocker at his size, I mean, he's listed at like 264, but he's a lot bigger than that, guys. He's at least 280. With his size, he almost looks bigger than Broderick Jones at times, and he can run the way that he can. He's got semi-reliable hands. He did have a drop yesterday, and then his ability to run after the catch. I mean, he's really tough to bring down. So the Steelers really see his value. He's really having a breakout season this year, in my opinion. He's one of the most valuable players on the Steelers offense overall. So good for DW. He has pretty much become this team's number 1 tight end at this point in terms of the snap share. Then we get to Jaylen Warren, and we stick to the run game here, and Warren is still amazing. I mean, the amount of times on that film where he was making guys miss, he was picking up an extra 2 to 3 yards, he was running over a Browns defender. He made an incredible catch on that little flip from Aaron Rodgers in scramble drill. Like, the instincts that he brings to the table, his pass catching ability, his pass blocking ability. Like, Jaylen Warren is doing a lot of really good stuff for this team, and honestly, he is the Swiss Army knife that really makes this offense go. So really good to see Warren back out there. He had another really good game, over 50 yards rushing. He added more to that as a receiver as well. Hopefully he can continue to have a really good season in the weeks to come. Then also, I thought there was a really nice mix in the Steelers run game this week. Not only in terms of getting Kenneth Gainwell and Caleb Johnson some carries. I think they had a combined 12 carries in this football game, outside of I believe it was 11 carries that Jaylen Warren had in this game. But also, I really like the mix of zone and power schemes that Arthur Smith is deploying in this offense. We put out a video before the Dublin game saying that I wanted to see more power run schemes in the Steelers offense because they were pretty much running exclusively zone stuff in the first few weeks. And I was like, man, these defenses know what's coming, but when you mix in power and you mix in zone and the defense doesn't really know what's coming, it makes it very difficult to defend. This is what Kyle Shanahan does. This is what Sean McVay does. This is what Matt LaFleur does. Like, all these guys that do such a good job scheming up the run game, they really have a nice balance between zone and power, and they keep opposing defensive fronts off balance. And that's exactly what the Pittsburgh Steelers have been doing these last 2 weeks. And now sticking here kind of close to the line of scrimmage, Pat Freiermuth, once again, is getting left behind. This week he only had 21 snaps. Both Darnell Washington and Jonnu Smith had over 40 snaps. So that just goes to show you that Freiermuth has pretty much been delegated as the number 3 tight end on this team. And Spencer Anderson is not that far behind Pat Freiermuth. He had 17 snaps as a tight end. Pat Freiermuth only had 21, and of course he only has that one catch. It was a good catch, and he picked up some decent yardage, set up a third and manageable, all that good stuff on the out route. And I do think Muth is kind of the quote-unquote zone killer tight end here, where he's very savvy. He can find those soft spots in zones. He's got pretty reliable hands and, pretty decent route runner. But it's pretty clear that he's become a liability as a blocker. And for this team that really relies on their tight ends to block, I think Muth's role is just continuing to shrink at this point. And now we get over to the offensive line, starting with Broderick Jones. And honestly, guys, I was really impressed with the fact that Myles Garrett only had one, sack yesterday. All these different things are like, I actually don't think he had a single sack. There was no sacks from Cleveland in the entire game. But like Broderick, when you look at the game itself, with 0 sacks and all this different stuff, Myles Garrett was nowhere to be found. You would assume Broderick played really well on film. But the reality is Rodgers was just getting the ball out pretty darn quick. He had some pretty bad losses. He did have some flashes that I really liked, and he's able to anchor a couple times really well one-on-one versus Garrett, and he had some good individual reps. But when I turned on the film today, I was expecting to see a much cleaner game than what was actually put on film by Broderick Jones. So that's a little bit disappointing to me. But Troy Fautanu, the guy on the other side there at right tackle, really impressed me in pass protection. He played really, really well against Isaiah McGuire and the other guys they put out on the edge this week. And now those guys aren't like killers or anything like that, but Fautanu certainly played with a lot of good technique, and he's been looking a lot better over these last few weeks. So very encouraged from what we're seeing from Troy. Then also the downfield passing game, the progression of it continued to blossom. It's been getting better and better as the season has gone on, in my opinion, and that really culminated this week with a couple of stats that should show you exactly that this downfield passing game, it's not like throwing it deep down the field on every single play, but it's certainly moving in the quote-unquote right direction where they are throwing the ball down the field more often now. You take a look here at the stats from Aaron Rodgers. He had the longest average time to throw of the season, so the fact that he was able to do that and take 0 sacks points to Rodgers' ability to maneuver pressure and know when to get rid of the football, all that stuff. But also with the added time to throw, that means he was throwing the ball down the field more often. All right, so his average depth of target was 6.79 yards, and both of these numbers were the highest that they've been all season to this point. So I predicted heading into the game that the Steelers' downfield passing game was going to start ramping up this week because defenses are going to have to start respecting the Steelers' run game, and that was absolutely the case. And something that's a little bit of an interesting stat here, guys, 7 out of Aaron Rodgers' 10 touchdown passes, and remember one of those 3 that weren't was just a pop pass to Jonnu Smith in week 1, have been downfield passes. So those are passes of 10 or more air yards, and he added another 2 in this football game. The ad-lib touchdown to Connor Hayward rolling out to his right was more than 10 yards, and same thing goes for that deep shot touchdown to DK Metcalf as well. So, even though this Steelers passing offense hasn't exactly been bombing the ball down the field, Aaron Rodgers has certainly picked and chosen his moments quite well to throw the ball down the field and into the end zone when he sees something in an opposing defense. So I really think Aaron Rodgers is playing high-level football at this point in his Steelers tenure. And unfortunately, sticking with the passing game here, guys, it certainly appears like the Steelers still do not trust in Roman Wilson, and I don't see why. I actually thought that Roman, in the time that he was out there, showed some pretty good routes. He was snapping off some of his stop routes pretty nicely, and I thought that he was open on more than one occasion. He had 1 catch for 12 yards. I think Roman Wilson on film looked a lot better than Scotty Miller, but Scotty Miller, had 11 more snaps than him, and Roman Wilson was only on the field for 8 of the Steelers' pass attempts this past week. So that was only 8 out of 30, passing opportunities that Roman Wilson was even on the field. And, you just have to wonder, why are the Pittsburgh Steelers not giving Roman Calvin Austin III's reps? I understand why Roman might not play in the offense when Calvin's healthy, because I understand they want to play a lot of jumbo 12 personnel and all this different stuff, and they want to play heavy, and he's wide receiver 3, so it makes sense that he might play a little bit less. But with Calvin Austin III out, you would think that Roman would be the next guy up on the totem pole, but he's just not at this point. And when I watch, him versus Scotty Miller on film, Roman looks better to me. So it doesn't really make sense to me why this coaching staff doesn't seem to trust Roman Wilson. at this point. And, I'm just hoping that this is kind of just something where, he has to, quote unquote, earn his spot on the team and all this different stuff. And he's going to get more and more time as the season goes on. But the fact that the Steelers are now actively looking for a wide receiver trade to add to the mix with DK Metcalf and Calvin Austin when he eventually gets back from injury tells me that Roman is certainly not earning the trust from Aaron Rodgers or the Steelers coaching staff at this point in his NFL career. Then the final offensive film takeaway here, guys, is Pittsburgh knows who they are. I thought that Dan Orlovsky said it best on the Pat McAfee show today. He was talking about how he's loving this Pittsburgh Steelers offense, and the reason why that is they don't try to be anything that they're not, all right? They're not this drop-back passing type of team where Aaron Rodgers is going to be sitting in the pocket for 5-6 seconds looking downfield. No, they understand that they don't have the best pass protection unit in the world. They get the ball out fast. When there's opportunities to throw the ball deep and quickly, they take them. But they try and run the football. They try to play smash mouth ball. They play action. And, they just know what they need to do to be able to be a successful offense. And they're a very self-aware unit, in my opinion, guys. When you watch this team operate, they play very efficiently, all right? They take a profit. They don't take too many negative plays. They don't turn the football over. And they're very efficient in the red area. When they're in the red zone, man, there's almost no better team in the National Football League at scoring touchdowns. And as we've talked about, Aaron Rodgers is doing a pretty darn good job, even outside the red zone, throwing deep shots for touchdowns. So I think that this offense is playing pretty darn good football right now, and I think that this is the type of offense that can lead to playoff success here in Pittsburgh if the defense can hold up their end of the bargain. Now make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you haven't already. If you are enjoying today's show, we still got some defensive takeaways here, guys, but if you're enjoying our in-depth coverage today, make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon. And now we get to our defensive film takeaways here, guys. My first takeaway is 4-man fronts appear to be staying here in Pittsburgh. Now, the Steelers traditionally run a 5-man front, but they've been playing a lot more 4-man fronts here in Pittsburgh over the last 2 weeks. And, the pass rush has absolutely gone bananas versus the Minnesota Vikings and the Cleveland Browns. They're not the best, offensive lines in the world. But I think the benefit of that, guys, is the Steelers can use their linebackers as kind of as blitzers because, they still are blitzing 5 men a lot. It's just they're using linebackers from the interior to blitz instead of just putting 5 guys down at the line of scrimmage and then blitzing everybody, right? When you have that 5-man dog front and you send everybody, that can be a little bit more predictable for the offense. It's easier to prepare for. But when you have 4 men down and you've got 2 inside linebackers and then usually a couple of defensive backs lurking around the line of scrimmage, quarterbacks need to kind of figure out who's coming, who's not coming, all these different things, and it can be very difficult for the quarterback to decipher, and it forces them to process quickly because Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson, man, these guys were absolutely firing on all cylinders as blitzers for the Pittsburgh Steelers yesterday. Then we get to the defensive line here, and Derek Harmon, the rookie out of Oregon, got a full workload yesterday, guys. He played just about as much as Keanu Benton, and he played just about as much as Cam Hayward. This team lists him as a starter, and they played him starter-level snaps for really the first time this season. I thought he played a pretty darn good football game. So it certainly seems like Harmon has fully ingratiated himself into the starting lineup here in Pittsburgh. Then Jalen Ramsey was playing all over the place, man. There's a lot of injuries at different points in the game, so they would line him up in the slot. They would blitz him. They would put him in the box. They put him in deep safety quite a bit in this game, and they even put him at outside corner when they were dealing with some of those injuries out there. So to have a guy like Ramsey, man, where even though he's not 100% dealing with a hamstring issue, he's out there playing all these different roles, being a communicator, being a blitzer, doing all the things that this defense asked him to do and to be as effective as he was. This guy's a hell of a football player, man, and we're lucky to have him. Then also the secondary was playing extremely aggressively, man. Like this pass rush was getting home so quickly, and Dylan Gabriel was throwing it underneath so much. Like the Steelers at some points were literally letting people run down the field because they wanted to jump flat routes because they just knew Dylan Gabriel wanted to go there so often. And I think that that's really the benefit of having such a good pass rush here in Pittsburgh that gets quick pressure at the rates that they do, is that it allows your secondary to play very aggressively, to go out, try and get interceptions, jump routes, do all those different things, and create the turnovers that we know this defense is known for. Then my final defensive film takeaway for you guys here is that the defensive starters getting a rest is a big deal heading into a short week. The final drive of the game, final 2 drives, T.J. Watt, Cam Hayward, Jalen Ramsey, these guys got some much-needed rest at the end of the game when you're up 3 scores, and That's going to give them a little bit of an advantage here because fatigue can play a big factor in these Thursday night football games, especially on the road. And to get that little bit of extra rest for those guys is a big deal heading into the short week. Now, before we get into Tomlin Monday here and just a couple of final items that we got from Coach T, make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. We just passed over 100,000 subscribers, the first individually run Steelers news channel anywhere on YouTube to do so. Greatly appreciate all of your guys' support. We're going to be going live tomorrow and on Thursday this week as well as Friday. And also, if the Steelers make a trade, we'll have breaking news coverage for you guys. But really what we're known for is our daily Steelers videos, about 15 minutes, twice a day, getting you guys the latest news and rumors surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers. So make sure you click that subscribe button if you love this football team and want daily content. All right, so now let's finish up today's video talking about Coach T, who took the podium today, talking about the Bengals, talking about this matchup, all that stuff. And I just have three things that I want to discuss with you guys today. Number one, the injury update from Calvin Austin III. And Tomlin said, we'll see if Calvin is able to go on Thursday, which it's a pretty good sign that he's in consideration to play on the short week. They don't have a lot of time to practice and get themselves ready. So the fact that Calvin is nearly back tells me that he almost certainly will be back for the Packer game if he can't go on Thursday. But if he can go on Thursday, that is a major boost to this offense, in my opinion, because he is the best true man-to-man separator on the Steelers offense right now. Also, Coach T talked about the importance of being adaptive, and I wanted to bring this up because a lot of people on Steelers Twitter says that, Tomlin never changes his ways and he never makes adjustments and all this horse shit. Well, Mike Tomlin specifically called this out today, and frankly, if you've been watching the film, they have made a number of schematic adjustments on both sides of the ball. So the idea that Tomlin doesn't adjust as a head coach is frankly bullshit, guys. And Mike Tomlin said this today at his presser, talking about his flexibility as a head coach, says if you're inflexible from a planning perspective in that way, you're not adaptable enough to be what you need to be. I'm never too married to a vision. So the fact that Mike Tomlin is able to identify problems and not be too married to a specific type of scheme or a specific type of coverage or a specific type of front, his ability to adapt and, do what's best for the football team is really what's allowed this team, despite lots of things going wrong injury-wise over the 18-year span that he's been here in Pittsburgh, to be able to retain competitiveness and also retain winning records in pretty much every single season he's had here in Pittsburgh. And then finally here, I just wanted to throw this in here. Mike also threw in a major shot at Browns GM Andrew Berry for trading away Joe Flacco to the Cincinnati Bengals. This is what Mike had to say about the trade. To be honest, the Flacco trade was a bit shocking to me. Andrew Berry must be a lot smarter than me or us because it doesn't make sense to me to trade a quarterback that you think enough of to make your opening day starter to a divisional rival that's hurting in that area. So I absolutely love that from Mike Tomlin, guys. I love that he's throwing a little bit of shade at the Browns right after beating them. It's always good to see that little friendly rivalry there and that little jab put in there by Coach T. Now, if you guys hate the Cleveland Browns, finish up today's show by typing FCLE down there in the comments section. I'm hoping to get at least 500 F Clevelands down there in the comment section. So do that for me before we head out here today. And make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already, guys. I greatly appreciate all of your guys' support. We'll be back tomorrow early in the day with our preview of Thursday Night Football between the Steelers and the Bengals. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you don't want to miss that video. Till next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.